Hi everybody, welcome to this very first technique breakdown for MMA Formula. My name is Wim and I'll be your host for this first episode. And in this one we'll take a look at one of the fights at UFC 215, the one between Jeremy Stephens and Gilbert Melendez. I enjoyed that fight a lot. It was quite well done from on both sides for different reasons, which I won't go into. So if you haven't watched the fight, get a fight pass, and it'll soon be available. And if you did watch it, you know what I'm talking about. Um, the reason I want to talk about it is because it featured very dominantly one of the techniques that is one of my favorites, which is a leg kick, and that was a key to victory for Jeremy. Now I'm going to show you all the different leg kicks that he threw in that first round, and that made the difference. I'm not going to show you every single one of them, but the first few ones, and then when things changed for the worst for Gilbert. So I am also going to reference a little bit of some of the information that is, and here's a shameless plug, in my leg kick book, which is available on Amazon and different retailers. I'll put the link in the description so you can get it. I'm not going to rehash everything that I wrote in that book, but I will give you the most important information for this fight here, what is relative to this fight. So I'm gonna go slow. I'm gonna play this at half speed first. So the camera switches angles quickly, unfortunately. So I will pause it then here right after, and there we go. So there's a little bit of how should I put it? There's a little bit of a mistake. Might be a little bit too harsh a word, but one of the things Jeremy does is that he breaks the golden rule of leg kicks, and the golden rule is that you never throw it without setting it up properly. And setting it up properly means that you only throw it when your opponent has the least possibility, the least chance of blocking it or defending against it in any other way. So that means setting it up. And if we had this camera angle of like 2 seconds ago, you would have seen it better. But Jeremy does this several times throughout the fight. He drops that lead hand, he yanks it down, and that initiates the hip turn and the leg kick comes in with a lot of power and speed, but it is clearly visible. He doesn't do a feint, he doesn't do another technique. He's a little bit, I wouldn't call it sloppy, but he takes risks. If you don't really understand what that means, well, I'd like you to look up the fight between Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman. What happened when Anderson just threw that leg kick without setting it up properly? He paid a huge price for it, and he broke his own leg, and he was basically out for a long time. So that's a kind of career-ending injuries for some people that you really don't want to have. So the golden rule is set up that leg kick in such a way that your opponent can't do anything about it. Now, there is some method to the way that Jeremy takes this risk, and I'll explain it a little bit. So this is the first leg kick. He just steps in and throws it. You can see how low his left hand is here already. So that means that here the complete left side of his face and a little bit of front is open as well. So again, another risk, but it speeds up his kick, gives him more power, and then he lands it, and it's really well done. He lands just below the knee, which is a little bit unconventional. Most fighters will go for the upper leg, but he lands it with such power. And I just want you to focus on the left hand of Gilbert, who is actually trying to get that left hand going, but he's a little bit off balance because of the power of the kick, and he reaches, but he misses. However, and this is why I mentioned that it's dangerous, his right hand is actually still online. So even though he doesn't get to throw the left hand, Gilbert then recovers his balance and throws right hand. And you can see that Jeremy is here just in time to get that guard up, and he shields against that big right hand. If he would have kept his left hand up right from the get-go, as you see here, so if he's in an on-guard position and his right hand and his left hand would both remain here, he can drop that right hand low and counterbalance for the kick coming in, but he would have been able to keep that left hand high very, very easily, and it wouldn't take such an amount of work to get it up next to his face on time to prevent being countered. So again, as long as you're fit, as long as you're in the beginning of the fight, and you still have a lot of energy, that's not a big deal. As soon as you get tired, though, or as soon as you get hit and you're a little bit groggy, then those kinds of little things add up, and that's when your opponent will have a lot of openings to exploit. So that would be the first thing I would say is try to keep that lead hand high when you throw the rear leg kick, and avoid slamming it down and pulling it back like Jeremy does here. Again, it's a small thing, but it can have nasty consequences. So then we move into the next part. So he lands the kick. It's done well. It's a good entry. It lands, so we can't complain. Gilbert tries to counter. He fails. The punch is blocked. And you see here, and this is interesting because Jeremy did this consistently in the fight. He steps back. He breaks away. So you see that the distance here between them is relatively big. So there's no way that Gilbert can counter him, and then Jeremy is going to plant on his back foot. So you see that he braces on his back leg. That stops his backwards momentum, and that puts him in a ready position. So watch what happens here. He's already in an on guard position, fists high. He has his spine here is straight. He's got a good support here on his lead leg. He's braced on his back leg, so he's in perfect fighting stance to, if he wants to, immediately fire back with a technique. Now, what that means is that from this position here, as he was retreating, and if Gilbert had followed him with whatever technique that he wanted to do, then Jeremy would have been in an excellent position to counter him right away. So that is good training, good tactics, throwing the leg kick from, I'll rewind a little bit, throwing the leg kick and immediately thinking defense, getting offline, getting out of reach, and then resetting and getting ready to throw the next one. So good work. That's the very first leg kick. So let's move on to the second one, which is a little bit different. So same thing, here you see it better. So that's pretty much my only complaint, dropping that lead hand so clearly and yanking it down to generate the initial burst of movement to speed up the leg kick. I wouldn't say it doesn't work, because it does work, but it tends to be a little bit of a telegraphed movement. So with a savvy opponent, they can actually use that against you. Now, same thing, so he yanks it down, and you see that his left leg steps forward, so Jeremy steps into range, and then immediately throws this really hard kick. Now, and this is, at this point, I would say that it's a little bit lucky that Gilbert didn't react faster, because you can see, and I'm going to go back here, so this is where Gilbert had, look at how he has his leg here, okay, it's in this bent position, so he was just a little bit bouncing backwards, and Jeremy knows this, so you'll notice that for the next few frames, Gilbert's leg is going to come forward again and he's going to put it down on the floor. So that's what I meant before with that there's actually a method to the risks that Jeremy's taking. He's timing it with the footwork that Gilbert is using. And Gilbert had this bouncy, very, I would say, a little bit too large, a little bit too big footwork, which meant that Jeremy could time his leg kick reasonably well. It's still a little bit of a risk, but it's one of the ways that you can set it up. So here you can see, I'm going to go backwards again. So this is Gilbert's leg is going to come forward. I'm going to go very slowly. And here at this point, you see that Jeremy is already going forward into that leg kick. So he's timing the entry of his leg kick with the footwork of Gilbert, who is now, as soon as he bounces forward again, forced to put that leg down immediately. And here's the interesting part. So this is the point where he spots the leg kick coming in and he puts the foot down, and he immediately instinctively tries to pick it up and do a regular block here. He doesn't get that far, but he tries to. So just pay attention to Gilbert's left knee and his lower leg, so his shin, see what happens. So the leg kick comes in, and you can see that he tries to pick it up. See, this is just before the impact. You can see that the angle here in the knee already changed. So which means that Gilbert is trying to actively block that kick, but because Jeremy is quick and he kicks so hard, then as he lands here, it doesn't help. But if he would have been a fraction of a second sooner, then Jeremy might have run into this very strong wall block, and that could have actually damaged his leg, and he would have been forced to either stop kicking, or at worst, it would have broken his leg. So that's the kind of risks that you run if you use a relatively high risk setup, which is timing it on the footwork, especially early on in the fight. We're just a little bit over 1 minute into the first round, so when your opponent is fresh, this kind of stuff is a little bit risky. But again, if you're aggressive, if you kick and you punch hard, you can get away with a lot of stuff. And also, again, just as a testimony to the strength of Jeremy's kicking techniques, notice how actually Gilbert is in a quite reasonably good stance. So he's got his spine straight, he's got his hips are level, he's got a support leg here, he's picking up that lead leg to block, he's got a really good guard, everything is nice and tight. So he's in a good position, there's nothing wrong with that. But the power of the leg kick is such that Jeremy just kicks him off balance and see what happens next. Gilbert is forced to recover. And this brings me to the next point. This is really well done by Jeremy. So as he steps in, he's going to rotate his hips to the right to power the leg kick. So that's what he does. Steps in, to the left, rotates his hips to his left, and the leg kick lands. Now there's the second part, obviously he needs to recover that leg, which means that he's going to have to rotate his body to the right again. Both his hip and his shoulder are going to have to rotate to the right as he recovers. And here's the tricky part, but if you can control this enough, you can actually use that same rotation to rotate the left side of your body, and in particular, that left arm, rotate that forward and use the same rotation, pulling that leg back, using the same rotation, keep the momentum going, and rotate your body further to your right so that that left arm can shoot out. And this is what Jeremy Stevens does really well here. So watch him recover that leg, and he's gonna plant on that back leg and then keep the rotation going and throw that left straight punch, which just comes short of landing. And if you get this type of rotation in there, it's quite a powerful technique. So the jab this way, done this way, is a lot more powerful than many other variations of the jab, because you've got the full torque that you can put into it if you train correctly, obviously. So again, well done by Jeremy, and we can move on to the next kick. So, and just a quick point before I go on. So notice that the punch misses and see what happens. So you see that Jeremy here is in a good stance, got his knee bent. He's a little bit leaning into it, which is perfectly normal after you rotated into that left punch, into that jab after the leg kick. So that's normal. But you'll see that what happens is that he misses. So that punch goes wide and he swings through a little bit. So this is where he was aiming, and because of the rotation, and when he misses, his fist goes off at an angle. But he doesn't fall forward, so he doesn't lose his balance and fall into whatever Gilbert has waiting for him. He remains at a distance by maintaining his balance. See here, and he can actually recover into a fighting stance before Gilbert can counter him. So that's an excellent job. It's really well done. Moving on to the next one. So here you see that once again, I'm not a huge fan of how Gilbert was using his footwork. And actually, if you listen to the end of the fight, so the post-fight interview that Jeremy did, he mentioned that he thought that Gilbert was using a relatively old style of mixed martial arts fighting. Again, old being very relative here, and that he had, and in his opinion, Gilbert hadn't evolved enough to how MMA is done nowadays, and he was vulnerable for leg kicks, and he just used it. I'm not entirely in agreement with that, but there is some truth to that, and we'll see this right away. So Gilbert is moving in, and notice as he pumps out his jab, and he, I think it's more of a glancing blow. It's not really full power, but just look at his stance here. He's got his lead leg relatively open. He's got his back leg almost fully extended. He's leaning into it with his upper body to reach with a really long jab. So this is kind of his structure here, and then he does a good job at keeping that other hand high. I wouldn't say it's necessarily wrong to do it that way, but it does mean that you're relatively heavy on that lead leg. You're going to have a lot of weight there, and we'll see this come back in a minute. That makes you vulnerable for leg kicks. Now, Jeremy seems to eat that punch a little bit, but he's not phased, and see what happens next. So you're going to see that Gilbert is going to circle to his left side, and Jeremy's going to compensate and do the same thing. But I want you to pay attention to the footwork of both guys. So Gilbert is circling away. He takes a big step back with his right leg, and he goes into an on-guard position. Now watch what Jeremy does. He steps to his left. He's going to drag that right foot back again, and look at this natural position. It looks like he's just standing upright. It's not really a fighting stance. He's in a really high stance here, and it looks very relaxed. And you see that Gilbert is in a similar stance. because he got offline, they got out of reach of each other. So and this is when they reset and where most fighters relax. I'm going to rewind again. So watch what Jeremy does with his footwork. He eats the punch, and then he sees Gilbert circling out. Then he steps with his left. He brings back that right leg. He's gonna here step with his left again. And one more time. See how he draws in that right leg. And he's still in this relatively narrow stance. So it looks like he's still going to be walking about and just being relaxed, but he's actually already preparing that leg kick. So that's excellently done by Jeremy. So I'm going to rewind this whole sequence. This jab comes in, Gilbert circles out, and now watch what Gilbert does. So he is stepping back. Again, he's bouncing a little bit on his feet, and see what he does now. He's going to step forward with that left leg. So just watch how his left leg is going to come forward and see what Jeremy does. So Gilbert's left leg comes forward, and that is the cue for Jeremy to step in and fire that leg kick. So, and that is excellent timing. Again, it's a little bit risky because you're not setting anything up with your arms or with another technique, but it does mean that if he can time it correctly every single time, then what happens is every single time um, Gilbert steps in, he's gonna eat that leg kick because as soon as his left foot is gonna touch the floor, as soon as it advances to get into reach again and attack Jeremy, every single time he does that, he needs to put his weight on there. So this is the moment where he puts weight on it, but this is also the moment when Jeremy is going to step in and blast him with that leg kick. So that's good timing. And then again, Jeremy retracts and see how immediately he brings that right hand up again. So this is well done. I'm going to rewind a little bit. Okay, so he steps in, he kicks, and then he comes into the on guard position. This is one of the things he did really well, and which is also why he didn't get tagged all that much when he threw leg kicks, is because he recovers instantly and thinks about defense during the recovery, as opposed to just kicking and hoping it lands and not thinking about the rest, which is what beginning fighters do. So that's another well-placed leg kick. Okay, and then they resume, they reset, and look for the next opening. So here's another leg kick. Once again, you see how I'm going to go slow frame by frame here. So watch what Gilbert's lead foot is doing. So he's going to step forward and then bounce off that lead leg and go back. So this is an example where Jeremy was just a little bit too late and why it's tricky to set a leg kick up like that, just timing the footwork of your opponent. So Gilbert is going to bounce forward and then bounce back, which means that as soon as Jeremy recognizes, okay, the guy's in reach, he tries to step forward again with his lead leg and go into the leg kick again. But Gilbert is already bouncing back again. And this is a glancing blow. It lands a little bit, I think, but it doesn't really do that much damage. And here you see Jeremy is at risk because if his leg swings fully through, he's going to spin around, and that leaves an opening for Gilbert to come in with whatever kind of striking techniques, or even take Jeremy down if he wants to. That's not what happens in this case, but that is a risk. So you see the leg swing through, and then Jeremy disconnects that leg from the hip motion. A little bit in an awkward stance, but it allows him to recover more quickly, and he breaks away again. And you see Gilbert tries to get something else going, okay, but already Jeremy is in a ready position, and he can counter immediately with his own left hand. So watching that sequence, so the leg kick comes in, he misses a little bit, but he recovers, and at this point, Gilbert tries to follow him forward, and they exchange jabs, and then from here they disconnect again. So that's really well done on Jeremy's part, and you see that Gilbert is going to try to get something else going, and this time he lands it. So once again, pay attention to that stance. It's a relatively large stance here with the leg extended, and this time it does land. I'm going to rewind a little bit so you can see that that jab actually snaps Jeremy's head back a little bit. Okay, and in this case that's successful. It didn't do enough damage, but it was a well placed shot. So moving on to what I think is perhaps the critical leg kick, If you watch the fight, you'll see that in particular after the next leg kick, you can see that the injury and Gilbert's leg was becoming quite pronounced, and you can see the discoloring of his leg already. So he steps in with that jab again, and you see how it comes just shy of landing. So we are in the same position again. Gilbert is going to step forward. He throws a quick jab. There's nothing wrong with the jab, but the way he throws it like this with both legs almost fully extended, which is more boxing type jab, he is very open to that leg kick coming in. And that's exactly what happens. So you see that Jeremy is, and I want you to watch Jeremy's head here, he's a little bit pulling it back, but then immediately he pivots into the kick, and this one lands really hard. So watch what happens with Jeremy's lead foot. He is not going to step forward this time because he recognizes the distance and he recognizes that Gilbert did the work for him by stepping into his range, being heavy on that lead leg, and then he retracts his fist. So once again, I want you to watch what Gilbert's fist is doing. He throws a jab, it misses, and it just goes back to the on guard position. But the whole time his left leg didn't move. It just stays there right in range of Jeremy Stevens' leg kick. So that's, I wouldn't call it suicide, but it's not very smart. And see how that leg kick just rams his leg totally off balance, and he has to fight hard to recover. And he tries to get a punch going off of this, breaking of his balance, but it's not all that successful. So again, this is a classic setup of perfect timing of using the footwork of your opponent against him, and that is what I was mentioning before. If you do it wrong, it's dangerous. If you do it right, it works really well. So Gilbert steps in, and you see Jeremy snapping back his head a little bit, but then just pivoting on the spot into that leg kick, landing it hard, and then again recovering, stepping back. So you can see that he recovered his leg kick. Already his hands are moving back up again. He's trying to get his feet underneath him, so he's back into a fighting position. So he can keep going in on offense if he wants to, or he can backpedal, get away, and play defense as he does here. And then Gilbert tries to get something going again, but it doesn't work out all that well. So, and at this point you can see in the fight, and if you look at the time, we're about 2 minutes into the fight, and Gilbert was already having trouble, and you could see the injury on his leg that was starting to build. So Jeremy obviously saw that too, so he was really smart about it. So he breaks away, and here we get to the next leg kick. Okay, same thing. We don't really get a good angle, but you see once again how he just steps in and throws that leg kick really hard. And this is where we see it. Again, the camera switches all of a sudden. This is where it lands. Okay, and there's a little bit of balance here. And you can see that Gilbert is trying to recover his balance right away. So I'm going to go slow. Again, we don't get the greatest angle here, but Jeremy walks into, steps forward and throws this hard leg kick again, and you can see how his leg here is passing through the block. It lands a little bit, but it doesn't really stay digging deep into the target, but he glances off and goes through. And then Gilbert immediately stumbles a little bit and tries to recover. And Jeremy again wisely goes back, breaks distance, and goes into a fighting stance again. And he doesn't let Gilbert counter him. So again, good tactics on Jeremy's part. So, and here you can see that Gilbert tries to get something going again, but Jeremy's smart, he breaks away and he resets and he waits for his moment again. So moving on to the next one, and again look at the stance here. So this is a really good shot of the differences in stance. Gilbert is in a relatively wide stance. Look at the angles between his upper and his lower leg. And you can see here that Jeremy is in a much more narrow stance and is much more stable. He's in a shorter stance as well. So just look at the distance between the feet of both men. Look at how much of a difference that is. So that means that every single time that Gilbert is going to step, if he uses this stance, that lead leg is completely vulnerable. Now, after the leg kicks that he received already, he should have known better. He should have known that he was in a dangerous position here, but he kept going, so Jeremy kept on attacking that leg. So from here you can see it again. You see the jab, this good setup. Cross comes at him, and then Gilbert tries to do this long lead hook. There's a jab again, and then immediately on the counter. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most damaging kicks that Jeremy threw. On the counter, he lands it just below the knee again. Again, a good look at the targeting. It's just below the knee on the part that was already severely injured by that at that point. And then you can see that I'm gonna get rid of that circle for you guys. So you can see that Gilbert here, he feels the pain, and it's like, oh crap, this kind of sucks, and he basically wants to quit right here. And you can see he's backpedaling, and very soon he was on the ground. So I'm not going to show you the rest because you know the rest of the fight. So Gilbert kept on going. That guy is very tough. So he did a really good job at managing his pain, even though he probably wanted to give up, but he kept going. He kept going at it. And Jeremy was very smart in the way that he approached it. A lot of guys make the mistake that as soon as they see a weakness, they bounce and they try to hit only that spot. What Jeremy did really well is that he took his time. He knew that the leg was vulnerable and he kept on attacking it, but it wasn't non-stop. He did other techniques as well. He even tried high kicks throughout the fight. So he did a bunch of stuff that meant that Gilbert was, even though he knew that his leg was going to be attacked, he couldn't discount other techniques. He couldn't just hope that it was only going to be leg kicks and he only had to worry about that. No, he could have been knocked out with a high kick or a punch to the face. So that's excellent work by Jeremy. I'm gonna just show you guys this last sequence again because it's really well done. So you see from here, Jeremy is a little bit threatening with that jab. Okay, he throws across, but he doesn't really commit to it. So, and that's the beauty of this setup, is that at this time, Jeremy knows that he has his timing down to land that leg kick on Gilbert. So he knows that. And Gilbert knows that he's going to have to do something about getting kicked in the leg like that, because if you look closely, you can see on the left side of his leg here, so just that front side here, okay, there's already this lump here, so the swelling has actually started, and he's in quite a bit of pain already. So he knows he's going to have to do something. And from here, you see that Jeremy just tries to lure him into exchanging or coming forward. He throws a jab, but he doesn't really commit to it. Same thing with the cross. Watch Jeremy's shoulders here. Watch his right shoulder, how it doesn't come fully forward. He's just gonna throw that jab, that cross out there. See, and this is the furthest it gets. So he's holding back. He's putting up a trap. But look at the difference here. There's almost a full fist width that he comes short, and he knows how to throw a right cross, so that's not the issue. So he's forcing Gilbert to come into a counter, and Gilbert does, and he misses on the first one. So you can see again, watch what happens here. Jeremy moves in with the jab cross, but you notice how he's gonna snap his head back and lure Gilbert forward right away here. See, he retracts, which is very well done. And then they get into this exchange. So he throws that jab again, but notice how again that jab is completely out of range. There's no way he was going to miss with that jab, but it gives Gilbert the idea that they're going to do some striking, some boxing, and Gilbert tries to get that going because obviously he doesn't want to get into a kicking game. And then immediately, see, Gilbert falls for the trap. He throws his long hook. Jeremy puts forward that fake jab, and then Gilbert tries to get something going again with boxing and steps in right away to try to land that jab. I want you to watch Jeremy's footwork here, watch what his left foot does right after he finishes this jab here. So this is the lure, that's the trap, and Gilbert falls for it. Now watch what happens with that left foot. As soon as from here he plants, he's going to go into that kick. So he's going to, after he throws that left hand here, watch the left leg, steps in. So he steps forward with that left leg and decreases the range right away. And he steps into distance for the leg kick. And right at that point, Gilbert tries to land another jab. And here you see, I'm going to rewind a little bit. So look, this is the position where the knee is naturally bent. So this is fine. But what's going to happen is that the shin bone is going to come across at this angle and blow that knee inward and do even more damage. So look at Gilbert's knee, see what happens to his entire leg. It gets blasted off balance. So he's chopping slightly downward this time, Jeremy. So what happens is that, look at this position here. I want to try to draw it for you, but see the foot is pointing forward, so the shin bone is pointing in a normal direction, but the upper leg is pointing inwards. So this is this awkward angle that is actually very painful. It could actually cause tears in the meniscus in the knee, so that can require surgery as well. So that's really well done by Jeremy. Good timing, good setup, and a lot of power once again. And this time you can see that the knee rebounds. And then here, this is again, this is a reaction that you typically see when someone's in pain. See how Gilbert is crumbling a little bit. See how he closes his body language. Then he tries to fight through it. He tries to step on that left leg again. Okay, and you can see that, it's only now hitting him the pain, and this is where he bends over, he folds up, and he's fighting through the pain, trying to get up again, and he knows that he's in a bad spot, and he backs up. And a few seconds afterwards, he went down. So we're at the 30-minute mark, so I'm going to close down this breakdown. Once again, the keys to victory here is a lot of aggression, a lot of power by Jeremy in his leg kick, just committing to it and throwing it really, really hard, and then with good timing. And in this case, the timing was mostly setting it up in such a way that he was waiting for Gilbert to take a step forward or put his weight on his lead leg, and then Jeremy timed his leg kick with that weight transfer so that he would land the kick when Gilbert was unable to pick up his leg because his weight was on it. So that was a main strategy that he used. Second part is that he always was thinking about recovery. So when you watch the fight again, you'll notice that he's always making sure that he brings up his guard again, that he steps away after the leg kick, that he circles, that he does something else other than just standing in front of his opponent, which is what would make him vulnerable. And then the final point is that Jeremy did a lot of other things as well. As soon as he noticed that his leg kick was becoming very effective and there was a lot of pain on Gilbert's part, he didn't just go for it. He kept constructing his victory and attacking different targets using different weapons, and every now and then he'd kick the leg again. So that is the sign of an experienced fighter who is patient, who is hunting for his victory, as opposed to just rushing in and trying to finish it off right away when he spots a potential opening. So excellent job, really well done. That marks the end of this first breakdown. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So please like, share, subscribe, obviously, and then if you like, you can see more content on my Facebook page, and I'll put the link in the description here below. So that's MMA Formula on Facebook, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks.